Everyone, welcome to episode 2 of No Dog in the Fight, the fantasy podcast of the JEB board media world. Just a few updates for everybody that's listening. We have now changed our date of when we record to Sunday afternoons, or not really Sunday night. It's a little bit more convenient for us. I know we're missing a few games here. Like right now, we're watching the Carolina game, and I know we have a game tonight and tomorrow night that we're missing. So a lot of some of the information that we'll give you is probably skewed. So we apologize for that. But with this week, it really doesn't matter in terms of reacting and processing the information that happened this past week, because it looked like in terms of studs and duds, everything was pretty clear cut from the very early.
Yeah, unless something crazy happens. I mean, I don't see much of a change in our picks. I mean, some of the guys you can't get worse than, and some of the guys, I mean, you can't really get better than unless you just have a fluke of a game for some random person.
Mhm. Well, and with that being said, Nick, I guess we will go straight into our studs and duds segment for the week, and you're going to take over the studs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of easy picking the studs because I mean, instead of going player by player, you could just say the Houston Texans offense.
Hmm.
But breaking it down kind of more specific, I guess you could say, you've got CJ Stroud who played, I mean, he broke the rookie record for the most passing yards in a game. He had 470 yards passing and 5 touchdowns, had 41.6 uh points. That's insane. He was the number one quarterback, but he's also a rookie. So the upside is huge when looking at him. And then our best as of right now, running back was Rashad White, which is, he's really picked it up the last 3 weeks. He scored 15.9, 17.9, and then this week with our running back stud, 27.9. He had
Really being utilized out of the backfield.
yeah. Well, he had 20 carries. So, I mean, he's getting the majority of the touches. He had 73 yards, which is pretty average for, 20 carries.
Hmm.
But he had the 2 touchdowns that really, really made an impact. But he also took all 4 of his targets for catches for 46 yards. So, I mean, tack on 8.6 yard or points right there. I mean, that says a lot. And so that he's somebody that's kind of emerging through whatever you call it with the Bucks, whether injuries to wide receivers or even inconsistencies with, Baker's health, whatever you may call it. Rashad White's getting really looked at, and I mean, he's making a big impact.
Right.
Then you had a wide receiver again. I mean, just kind of sticking with the program with the Texans. Tank Dell, another rookie. He was leading all receivers at 29.6 points this week with their big game. I know he had over 100 yards. I think he only had like 6 catches, but I think it was like 111 something yards,
Insane.
uh, and 2 touchdowns. And so, and he caught the game winner. So he was again. I mean, he's just emerging. He's emerging as a franchise wide receiver for that team, and that connection between him and Stroud is crazy good. And then lastly, again, I sound like a broken record, is Dalton Schultz, the leading tight end this week. And Dalton Schultz, again, he's for Houston. Let's see, Dalton Schultz, he had 29 even points, but he had 10 catches off 11 targets for 130 yards and a touchdown. So I mean, again, you can't get much better than that if you're one of those people that's either a Texans fan that you just decided to play a lot of Texan players. I mean, it's looking good this week.
Yeah. Well, I guess that gets into our duds, and the first one that we're going to go through is we're going to go quarterback to tight end like you did, but Geno Smith just had an abysmal week this past week against the Baltimore defense. We talked about it on, I think we talked about it on here a little bit. We talked about it on the main show. But Baltimore's got a really good defense. That's kind of what they live by. I mean, that's what they have since Harbaugh has been there, is their defense. 157 yards, no passing touchdowns, one interception, and one fumble as well. So two turnovers obviously is going to knock that. But the fact that he only got what is that, 6 points off of passing, and then the turnovers probably
Two
knocked,
turnovers.
yeah, knocked 4 of those 6 points off. So not a great outing.
Not a good
Uh,
outing for the entire team.
yeah, they kind of got scrubbed. Um, and then on the other side of the fence, though, our dud running back this week is Kenneth Walker III for the Seahawks. So, I mean, again, kind of like you said, that nope, they couldn't really get anything going. For some reason, KW3 only had 9 attempts rushing for 16 yards. Also had one reception for 1 yard. I'm sorry, yeah, one reception for 1 yard. He was targeted twice. So I don't know if it's like we've talked about before. Maybe they got down early and went into panic mode and started passing, and obviously that didn't work. But Kenneth Walker III is someone that needs to touch the ball in total at least 20 to 25 times, whether you hand the ball to him or you pass it to him. Like he is right now, he is the clear cut option on offense. It's going to work if you get him the ball. And obviously, as we see here, nine touches, 10 total touches for him, and nothing happened.
Here's the big difference too. Baltimore had the ball for 40 minutes of that game.
That is wild.
And so what would happen would be they would have a 3-and-out, and then they wouldn't get the ball back for, until next quarter. So, I mean, they, like you said, I mean, they lost 37-3, but it was just so quick with their outs, 3-and-outs, or, their quick drives, and then they just wouldn't get the ball back. There were not many explosive plays for Baltimore, so they just kind of slugged it on through, and Kenneth Walker never really had a chance.
Yeah. Well, and I don't even know if I said, but he only scored 2.7 points. So, and looking at it, like I think I'd have to look at his average, but I mean, you got to think, man. Like looking through his game log, it's like he had 12 attempts. This is all rushing, no receiving attempts, all rushing. 12 rushing, 17, 18, 17 bye week, 19, 26 against Arizona. The past 2 weeks where he has scored under 10 points, he had 8 rushing attempts and then 9 rushing attempts. So, and I believe, let's see, they lost to Cleveland last week, didn't they? Or
Yep.
they
No.
they just barely won. I can't remember right off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah, they did barely just win. Yeah, he threw like a late touchdown pass to Jackson Smith and Jibba.
Yeah, so but obviously again, there's a common theme of playing well, and it's when you give Kenneth Walker the ball. Our wide receiver dud kind of hits close to home a little bit. Chris Godwin, he did not have a great outing against Houston today. He was targeted 6 times, but only had 2 receptions for 16 yards. So he had 3.6 points. I know he's been one of those guys that like you'll see him kind of like, he had a big injury back 2 or 3 years ago. But he's one of those guys, he's kind of like honestly one of the same with Mike Evans, where he just kind of he tweaks his hamstring or like strains his ankle or something like that. And, he plays through it because it's never like really, really major stuff besides the one injury. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's playing through
just
something.
Lingers.
Yeah. And it just lingers. But again, though, 3.6 is that's kind of been the story of his career ever since he came back from injury, is kind of the inconsistency. And then finally for our tight end this week is kind of a shocker. If you keep up with fantasy quite a bit especially over the past 5 years, Travis Kelce, who is the number 1 tight end statistically in ESPN fantasy, only had 4.4 points. He had 3 receptions for 14 yards. Which again is kind of a shocker because, like we've talked about it, and we'll talk about it on the main podcast, but Miami doesn't do well against teams over 500. And you would think that Kelce would have just exposed the Dolphins defense, because their defense is not great. They win they win and they lose by scoring like a high tally-touted offense. And he goes out there and he has 4.4. Like that's uncharacteristic of Travis Kelce.
Yeah, and it wasn't injury related.
Mm-mm.
So
Just
he just did not get looks. He was covered, and just the entire offense in general just looked sluggish today. But I mean, they still somehow got a win. But I think that's, again, like we said, we will talk about it more. But just to the more speaking to Miami not being able to perform in,
yeah,
good
well,
games.
and kind of like what you said, because I didn't watch the entirety of the game, but I did see, Kansas City go up pretty quick. Um, Mahomes went 20 for 30 for only 185, two touchdowns.
Lowest this season.
Yeah. Also, their leading receiver was, is it Noah Gray? Noah Gray,
Yeah, the
their
backup tight
backup
end.
tight end, had 3 receptions for 34 yards. So Mahomes spread the ball out, but still, this is not great from the Kansas City offense, from the offense that we've seen here in the past. All right. Well, since we got out of our recap, I guess we'll go into this coming up week, talking about who we would pick up on the waiver wire, and just for clarification purposes, when we go through this, when we go through the waiver wire and the sell high buy low, we go through the waiver wire by players that we don't think are necessarily on a team yet. And then with the sell high buy low, that's different. That's obviously players that are on teams. So that's kind of our rationale. So it may not match up with the league that you're in, but that's kind of what we're going off of.
I mean, if you're
So
in a 16-man league, we're kind of basing this off a 12-man league. So,
exactly.
if you're really scrounging, then yeah, these people may be on a team already, but in a normal league, they shouldn't yet.
Yeah. So, but with that being said, Nick, why don't you go ahead with your waiver pickups?
First, if you're looking for a tight end, how we always, every year, it just seems like the first 5 tight ends are pretty good. And then after that, it's just a question mark.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Taysom Hill, unless you're a Saints fan and you just love the Saints, he probably is not on a roster.
True.
But Taysom Hill, he's the tight end 11 right now, and he's had a really slow kind of start to the season with just his kind of role, because he's not truly a tight end. But right now, that's what's actually making him very valuable, because the last 4 weeks he scored 12.6 or 12.26 because he had a passing play, 16.8, 22.46, and then this week he had 20.62. And I think it was the 16.8, he didn't even score a touchdown. So even if, like, you take away the touchdown value, they really put him in this offense, not letting, I mean, they let Derek Carr be QB1, but they're pulling him in for more packages than we've seen in the past, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So he's really becoming a weapon, especially with the run game. And so I would say more than in past years with his usage. So if Taysom Hill's sitting on your bench and you need a good solid tight end, if it's a bye week or whatever it may be, I mean, hell, I've got Darren Waller and he just went on IR. So, who knows? I might pick
Yeah.
up Taysom Hill. So,
Well, and
uh,
think about Taysom Hill too. We've always, like, people have always said over the past, 4 or 5 years, basically since Drew Brees is retired, is that Taysom Hill is a Swiss Army knife.
yep.
So I think kind of what you were alluding to. It's not about putting him in a position. It's about putting him in the best position, because guy's an athlete. He's an incredible athlete, very strong, very fast, and he can make plays. But he's not one of those guys that he can play receiver the entire time and just burn people like a Devontae Adams, or he can't be a Kelsey the entire time, or a McCaffrey. But he can make those McCaffrey-esque, Kelsey-esque, Devontae Adams-esque plays once or twice a game in that position.
Yeah, he's only getting about 10 to maybe 12 touches, whether that be runs, passes, or catches. But like you said, I mean, it's just based on the usage. He is in the game plan, but he's not, he's listed as a tight end. He's not a tight end. He's just, again, just kind of a random positionless football, essentially.
Yep.
And then with my next one is Demario Douglas, wide receiver for the Patriots. Demario Douglas has been very overlooked this entire season, not by us, but like by the team, because they really haven't used him. But right now, looking at the receivers that are available, And Demario Douglas, he's not bad. He had 5 catches for 55 yards this go around this week. And, I don't like anybody on the Patriots offense except maybe Ramondre Stevenson. But
Agreed.
since Kendrick Bourne went out with a torn ACL and he's out on IR, Demario Douglas, he's had the last 3 weeks, he's had 6 targets, 7 targets, 7 targets. And like I said, he had 5 catches for 55 yards. If he can throw a touchdown in there, and you've got a low end flex right there. So he's definitely good for staying on your bench or, like I said, coming in on a bye week or fit your team needs. But he's gonna score you some. He's not gonna be a huge, blowout player, but he's gonna have you a solid, I'd say a 10-point floor. So
yeah. Well, and that goes in my waiver pickups. And so one guy that is probably on your waivers, not based off of performance, but based off the situation, is Josh Dobbs. Obviously, with that trade that was made to Minnesota from Arizona, he is. I mean, he was listed quarterback, technically 3, if you want to include Kirk Cousins, but technically he was quarterback 2 today. He didn't start the game. Quarterback went out with injury. And he went out and scored 24 points, 24.92 points. In the past 2 weeks, he averages about 23. So, and the thing is, like, he is kind of like, we alluded to this, like, I think week 3 on the main podcast. He makes plays. Like, he's not going to sling the ball 60 yards, but he makes smart plays. He is going to, on a 3rd and 5, if nobody's open and he sees space, he's going to run 6 yards for the first down. So with that being said, he had 158 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and then he also had 66 rushing yards and a touchdown. So he had 3 total touchdowns today. He unfortunately had 2 fumbles, but if you're looking for a quarterback, he is probably there because of the situation. So look
put
for
some
him on the
weapons
waivers.
around him.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, because you got Jordan Addison, you got KJ Osborne, Justin Jefferson hopefully comes back at some point in time, TJ Hawkinson, and then Madison showed up, who we'll talk about here in a second. So I mean, Dobbs would be a good pickup. Another pickup, and I'm not saying this as a one-off play, but I think Jonnu Smith would be a really good pickup on the waiver wire. The reason being,
tight end 1 for Falcons.
So, well, and the thing is like, everybody says, oh, you got to take Kyle Pitts. Well, Kyle Pitts has been underused with Desmond Ridder as a quarterback. Everybody knows that. The thing that was different this week was Taylor Heinicke starting at quarterback. So obviously each individual quarterback is going to have their individual targets that they feel comfortable throwing to. One of those today was Jonnu Smith. He had 6 targets, 5 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown. Now, granted, that one touchdown was, 40 yards, 50 yards, something like that. The little screenplay.
To the house.
Yeah, he took a screen to the house. But in the same token, he had the ability to do that. Jonnu Smith has never really been a bad tight end. I mean, he was at the Titans. He was their tight end number 1. I think he went to the Patriots. He was tight end number 1. So the only reason he's not tight end number 1 right now is because people still are riding the Kyle Pitts train. So I think picking up Jonnu Smith, especially if Taylor Heinicke going forward is the quarterback, may be a smart move to have as a backup tight end, or if he keeps producing as a number 1. And even, looking at his record, there was 3 weeks in a row where he scored over 10 points. And then this week he scored 21. So really it's just a matter of, are they going to throw it to him? And I think Taylor Heinicke will. With that being said, this will now take us into our sell high and buy low for the week. Nick, I'll start this one off if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say sell Derrick Henry high. The reason I say that is statistically he's not having the year that he's had in the past. He's not going out. He's rushed for 100 yards twice. That's it. One of them being last week against Atlanta, and then against Cincinnati for 122. looking at their schedule, they face. It's really about matchups. They're facing some more stout offenses. Like I would say, Tampa Bay has a good offense. Jacksonville has good offense. They have Miami later on in the season. Houston, if they keep playing the way they're playing, Jacksonville again. So I think later on in the season, he's not going to be able to produce because I hate to say it because I kind of like how it's playing out because it's chaos. But I don't think the Will Levis is going to be able to continuously put out the way they're putting out. And the Tennessee offense is so one dimensional, anyways, especially when they get into their divisional play. I think he gets figured out. So, and then my uh, buy low for the week is going to be Alexander Madison. And the reason why I say Alexander Madison is I think he fits into that Josh Dobbs QB1 scheme better than Kirk Cousins. Because Kirk Cousins, as we have seen, is going to throw the ball downfield. Josh Dobbs, yeah. Josh Dobbs being a more, I guess, not as confident in passing downfield just because he's a newer quarterback still trying to
You don't know their names.
Yeah, exactly. This is his first game as a Viking. So in the past couple weeks, Alexander Madison has scored the highest he has scored is 17.5 in week 3. Then he scored 13.4, and after that, he has not scored over 13. So he's had a lackluster year, but I think he will start getting the ball more on checkdowns because a big thing right here I'm looking at, he had 16 attempts he had 16 attempts this week and 16 attempts last week. 44 yards this week, 31 yards this week. So the big difference was that number one, he scored a receiving touchdown. Number two, he had 49 yards receiving, and he had 2 receptions, whereas last week he had 1 reception, 2 yards, no touchdowns. So I think he gets involved in the passing game a little bit more, just in the check down as a check down option with TJ Hawkinson.
Well, Cam Akers tearing his Achilles because Cam Akers was stealing all his touches since the trade, and now it's kind of back again towards the beginning of the season. It's just Madison.
Yep.
So,
well, that leads into yours.
Yeah, for my sell high, talking about injuries and kind of like a Chris Godwin-esque player is Jalen Waddle. I'd sell him pretty high. Jalen Waddle is a big name that people like to hear, and they immediately associate him with, oh, that's a wide receiver 1.
Yep.
When he really hasn't been that this year. But like he is, every single game, it feels like the last 5 games, I get a notification saying Jalen Waddle's headed to the medical tent. And he'll come back and he'll make a big, 20-yard catch, and then that's it.
Yep.
And he hasn't scored many touchdowns this year. And so just based on the name and with their offense, I would sell him high because I just don't think things are going to get any better for him.
Yeah.
And then my buy low is Isaiah Pacheco for the Chiefs. Pacheco, the last 2 weeks, he's done he hasn't been great. He had 6.2 and 6.8. But he's still the running back number 11. And I think the Chiefs, as they continue to struggle with their passing, they're going, and Andy Reid is a great coach, and he's going to figure out a way if he can't get it to his receivers, and if they're shutting Travis Kelce down or whatever that may be happening, they're going to get the ball to Jerick McKinnon and they're going to get the ball to Pacheco. And Pacheco scores a touchdown or anything of that sort, he's going to be a valuable flex at the very least. And so I just even say a low end running back 2. So you could probably pick him up pretty cheap right now for probably a bench player that could translate into a pretty big pickup. So Pacheco is my sell high, or my buy low. So
Gotcha. All right. Well, I guess that will lead us into our final segment this week is best possible lineups. So what we'll do is we'll go through position by position. Nick, you started off, and I'll go with mine.
Yep. So at quarterback, I've got Joe Burrow. When Cincinnati played the 49ers, Joe Burrow seemed to have it figured out. Maybe he's healthy after the bye. But but they're going to go up against Houston. And, Houston, they have an okay defense, but I think with Cincinnati kind of showing up and showing out, honestly, I think Burrow is going to have another one of his 25 to, I'd say 25-point game. I think that's high based on what we've seen this year. But if you look at last year, how he's playing, that was normal. And I think we're seeing a little bit of like, okay, that's last year Joe Burrow coming back because he's hitting Jamar Chase, he's hitting T. Higgins again, he's hitting Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon is getting involved. Like they're figuring it out.
Yeah.
And so I think Joe Burrow is going to have a really big game against the Texans next week.
Yeah. Well, and with mine, it's one of those things. It's like you can't go wrong with him because he is quarterback number one. Josh Allen. Expect Josh Allen to have a big game against a bad Denver Broncos defense. I know a lot of stuff is riding. Like I wouldn't say a lot of stuff is riding on this game, but we can see how he does against a decent defense. But I mean, I think he's just going to light Denver up. With Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Dalton Kincaid is starting to come out of the woodworks a little bit since Dawson Knox is injured. So expect, and you can already expect a big week from Josh Allen, but expect a higher than his normal week,
which is pretty high.
Yeah, exactly. With my running back, I'm going to go Bijan Robinson against Arizona. As Kyle has talked about before, Arizona's in like a bad spot. They traded away Josh Dobbs, and now they're waiting for Kyler Murray to come back. Their defense is subpar at best. Obviously, they're 1-7, so their defense can't be that great. So I know Bijan didn't have a great week this week, but I think he's going to bounce back. I think Arizona will have a comfortable win, and I think them being comfortable within the game is going to get Bijan more touches, i.e., more points.
I agree. I think he'll do much better, and they'll get him more involved unless Arthur Smith is just an idiot, but that could be the case. But they got to use him. They got to use him. Mm-hmm. I've got someone that when I said it, you kind of made a face. You're confused. It was ETN against the 49ers, because you think about the 49ers, you're like, God, how is a running back going to do well against the 49ers because of their defense? Well, the last 3 weeks, the 49ers have let up 140 yards, 90 yards, and 160 yards last week. And their 90 yards was when they played Cincinnati. And I mean, Joe Mixon's not that kind of running back, so ETN has played phenomenal this year and exceeded expectations because his big thing was he gets yards and he gets these big, catches for 30, 40 yards, or he'll make these big runs. Yeah, chunk plays, but he doesn't score touchdowns. Well, I know he's top 3 in the league right now for rushing touchdowns. And so he's kind of shut everybody up. And I think ETN's going to have a really, really big week, coming off. I don't even know who they played last, they're on bye. They're coming off bye.
Yeah, they are.
So yeah, I think he's going to have a really big game against 49ers.
Well, and another thing too is like you're talking about the 49ers letting up all those rushing yards. The thing about Jacksonville is they really don't have a running back by committee. Everybody, I know me and you specifically had high hopes for Tank Bigsby. And he's not getting he gets maybe 2 touches a game. So Travis Etienne is their running game. So if those averages stay that high and he's getting that many touches, I mean, he may explode this week.
Yep. And so I'll stay with me for a second. For my wide receiver, I've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is, I mean, God, he's just such a great, consistent player. And he's going up against my Chargers. And the Chargers are the 32nd ranked pass defense. And going up against the Lions, I mean, I hate it, but there's really no corner number one that they lock down. Nobody's going to lock him down. He's going to get in space. He's going to catch. He's going to go for a touchdown, maybe 2. St. Brown's going to have a really big game.
Yeah. And with my receiver, I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb, I mean, we talked about it last week. I mean, he was the number one receiver. He had 41 points. Um, Dallas is changing their tune a little bit. They're going more to, like I think you referenced it, air raid offense. Just, you know, sling the ball with Dak Prescott and see what he does. Not utilizing the run. So I think CeeDee Lamb is going to be big a big target or next week against the Giants, who are, I mean, just struggling all the way around. I mean, Daniel Jones just got hurt. Saquon Barkley has been hurt. He's finally back. But I mean, he's questionable every single week. So that Giants defense is going to have such a strain on them from being on the field that they're going to end up getting in foot races with CeeDee Lamb, and he's just going to win.
Yep.
Um, and then that goes into my tight end. Again, this isn't really this is I'm not picking this because he had just one good week. Dalton Schultz though at Houston, I'm going to take him for my tight end. I think that I really think that this is the week. I know he's had a great year so far, but CJ Stroud is really coming out this week. You know, proving that hey, I was one of the better quarterbacks in the draft. Like I should have been taken first. So
He's glad he didn't get taken first, though.
yeah, honestly, yeah. But with that, as we have seen in the past, with a lot of good quarterbacks, they always have a good, reliable tight end to check down to or to get the ball to in certain situations. I think Dalton Schultz, he's already been that for CJ Stroud, to be quite frank with you. But I think he's figured it out like, okay, like if CJ gets in a tough spot, if the pocket breaks down, I need to be in a spot where I can get the ball from him. You know, whether it be a little out to the flat or a little curl route, 3 yards down. Um, he needs to be able to get the ball, and I think they are going to capitalize on that. And like I said, I don't think there is a better friend besides an offensive line, a veteran offensive line, to a young QB than a veteran tight end.
Yep. And anybody that gets 11 targets is a must start.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
For my, are you done?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, who's yours?
For mine, I've got TJ Hawkinson, and I feel like this. If hell, I don't even know his name. The first quarterback that played for like 5 minutes for the Vikings. If he had stayed the quarterback, I would not have picked Hawkinson. But
Yeah.
now that Josh Dobbs is in, Hawkinson's probably going to have a big game this week. Again, I doubt Josh Dobbs even knew his name, but he had 7 catches for 67 yards. And so he's still getting the ball. He was their number one receiver. And I think next week when they play New Orleans, who has a little bit of a stingier defense, I think Josh Dobbs, like you said, new quarterback. He's not a rookie, but he's new to that, kind of he's going to have about a week and a half, 2 weeks worth of prep time for this game.
Yeah.
And he's going to find Hawkinson, big target, red zone. He'll probably catch a touchdown. And so Hawkinson's going to have a good game. I'd say anywhere from an 18 to 20 point game.
Yeah, I believe it. And then with your flex, kind of looks familiar.
Yeah. I also went with CD. And obviously we didn't know who each other's were, but I told we kind of have the same analysis about CD that, the Giants are just in shambles right now. There's no reason that he should slow up. I mean, he had a great game when they've last played. I said the worst part of this matchup is that the Cowboys are going to go up pretty quick and probably stay up where they don't have to pass.
Right.
Granted, they're an air raid team right now. The Cowboys are, so he'll get his regular looks, but again, I mean, his worst outlook is, do they get up and quit passing? So that's a good problem to have, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and that leads to my flex. And I know he had a bad week this week. We actually talked about him earlier for our dud. But Kenneth Walker III against Washington, especially a Washington team that just traded away 2 of their best defensive ends, I feel like is just going to run all over Washington. I don't have any doubt in Kenneth Walker the third. I have doubt in the people surrounding him. And like we talked about earlier, the biggest issue that the Seahawks had this past week was getting down fast and not getting Kenneth Walker the ball. So when you lose a game 37-3 and your running back only has 30 something yards rushing, I mean, it's pretty obvious to see what happened there. But in the same token, it's like Washington's defense is a little bit worse it's not really a lot worse than the Ravens. Their offense is hit or miss. So I think if the Seahawks can get out there and grind and have 6-7 minute drives and give Kenneth Walker the ball, I don't know, 5 to 6 times a drive, I think that I think he does fine.
They should. I mean, there's no reason they shouldn't give him the ball. And the thing with Washington too, I don't think Washington has the potential to pull away like the Ravens did, where I think they're always going to be in that game where they're able to use KW3 the entire game, and that's going to really help his usage.
Absolutely. Well, that ends episode 2 of No Dog in the Fight as we sit here and watch the end of the Cowboys and Eagles game with 5 seconds left. So, Nick, since we're still on here, what's the call here? What do you do right here? 5 seconds. 5
I
seconds
had
left.
red zone on, so I didn't. It stopped, so I haven't even seen the end.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's like we still have 5 seconds left.
Oh,
yeah. So, and then Dak took a sack, and then threw the ball over whoever's head. So 22-yard line. Last play of the game. What are you calling right here?
I like a seam trying to get, it's probably going to be cover 4, try and get that middle. I don't like going to the edge, either that or let's see, it's at the 27. Yeah, it's too long for a crossing. So yeah, I would either say a post to that middle of the safeties, because I'm sure the Eagles have like 4 safeties back there. So
oh yeah, I mean, from what it looks like, 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, there's 5 people within 10 yards.
Yeah.
So they're going to play that soft zone.
Yeah, I just saw that they didn't get it.
Yep.
So,
but all right.
Tough.
Well, that ends No Dog in the Fight, plus a run over from the analysis of the Eagles and Cowboys game. So everybody tune in to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, listen to JEB Board Podcast that comes out every Wednesday morning. Go check us out on Twitter and Instagram at JEB Board for Twitter, and then JEB _ board _ podcast for Instagram. But until next time, guys.
JEB board.
Until next time, guys, don't get faded.
Yep.